Number 32. When the time arrives for what could be termed the crash of all your systems of communications, utilities, and supplies, there will be turmoil and confusion of massive proportions. It behooves you who are well aware of this possibility to survey your personal situations and to make contingency plans. It is amazing to us that this information is known, but each assumes that it will happen around them but not to them. You are aware of the existence of various mechanisms that would provide at least minimum replacements for your utility needs. Even coordinated systems are available. The project will not make the shift in consciousness before this breakdown of current lifestyle. There will be a period of chaos. How long that will last depends on the completion of phases 2 and 3, the conception of the new paradigm, and then the spread of it through the conscious awareness of your brethren. As you can deduce for yourselves, communications are relatively easy before the breakdown, and difficult at best after it. It is critical that you truly realize and begin preparing for this advancing menace with as much focus and dispatch as possible. We are long past the "I can hardly wait for it, but I don't have time to prepare for it just yet" syndrome. It is necessary for you to look carefully at your priorities and to remember that you have made commitments that involve the survival and transcendence of as many of your willing brethren as possible. This does mean that they have to be occupying their bodies for this to be successful. This is indeed a heavy responsibility, but we again remind you that all possible help is available if you but ask and move your feet. It would appear that it is necessary to also remind you that the discussions of Phase 2 must be conducted in places that are not likely to contain listening wires. It is suggested that you view the movie called Enemy of the State, and listen carefully when the character Brill describes the capabilities of the electronics. He goes through the list at top speed, and so you must be listening carefully. It was also given on TV when the filming process of the movie was reviewed. Brill, in the movie, reminds the hero that the capabilities he is listing were available many years previously. However, the capability to apply them in a massive manner was not possible until recently, but the added sophistications since exceed what is demonstrated in the movie. All of you are being observed, and when you gather, you can be sure your discussions are of interest. We would prefer that this project continue unnoticed for as long as possible. If this sounds melodramatic, so be it. Ask for discernment and then view the movie and you will understand. As our arrogant planners flaunt their methodology before your eyes, assuming that sleeping minds have little discernment between programming and entertainment, there is no reason we cannot use this information to our advantage. When you ask for discernment within our purposes, the ability to interpret and to envision ways of applying the laws given you will provide avenues avoiding their entrapment techniques. As all-encompassing as they appear, they are inventions of opposite focus and thus contain the elements of self-destruction. Just as divine purpose contains within it the impulse for self-expansion, the opposite contains the tendencies of self-destruction. When the negative polarity is expanded, then its innate tendencies are magnified, just as the opposite is true within the positive polarity. It is within the path between the two that the spiral of evolution exists. It is important to note here that the meaning of the word evolution has been purposely distorted by implanting the idea that evolution and adaptation are synonymous. Animal life and even human life at one level adapts. Evolution refers to the spiral of spiritual experience through, think holographically, its return trip to the source. Here you can see a correlation of spiral to spirit and holographic to holy. When the appropriate moments arrive, you will have the discernment to bring forward into your conscious awareness that prickly feeling that causes you to move to a more appropriate place, and it will be available. Planning ahead does not work. It is necessary to be flexible and move in the moment. It is spontaneity that provides the atmosphere in which creation moves without restriction. Since creation is what you are about, then it is important to move within the framework of purpose as spontaneously as possible. Though it would seem that opposites are at counterpoints, indeed this is combining the polarities in a complementary fashion, allowing for the spiraling effect that is desired for movement in a balanced fashion. Polarities are not limited to extreme opposites as in black and white, on and off, good and bad, etc. Pink and gray are opposites, but of a different intensity. These intensities are available in abundance to apply, and through this principle diversity within a focus is accomplished. How does this apply to the project at hand? It is through the diverse contributions toward the goal of completing Phase 2 that the appropriate composite will come forth. Each session will be a think tank of spiraling ideas toward the goal, fueled by combining the individual minds into an empowered group focus. It is the addition of the group focus that gives the increased power of the creative presence. Because the creator is not a personal presence at the third-dimensional level, he cannot be literally present, but the combination of focus provided by the shared common goal brings forth a greater power, particularly when numerical combinations are observed. The common language of creation is mathematical formulation. The practice of numerology touches upon how these formulations apply to individual lives. Spontaneity is allowing the conscious awareness to relax so that harmony with these foundations of existence will bring forth the desired results within the framework of defined purpose. The purpose of these think tank sessions provides the framework to bring forth a greater purpose that in turn will be the framework for the new paradigm. It will be the framework to provide for individuals to continue the process within their own experience. This may seem simple enough, however the strategy, it is in the understanding and follow-through of the steps within the universal laws. Allowance is the most difficult to incorporate. Rising above the need to control is the leavening of the loaf, so to speak. Volumes could be written regarding this, but it would not change anything. It is in the doing that it is accomplished. It is the doing of this one facet that opens the door to the transcendence of this dimension. The ability to apply this principle is built upon the use of the previous two, and through the application of all three, the fourth is reached, and bingo, you are there at the point of choice. To go or not to go. Graduation requires the release of attachments, then not now. Just as you have been misled regarding your ego, so have you been misled regarding your attachments? There is a difference between attachments and addictions. That is for you to discern, and now is the time to release the addictions. You must ask yourself what it is that you think must remain in your experience and what it would be pleasant to have, but not absolutely necessary. You will be surprised if you take a few moments to make even a brief list of your technological wonders and contemplate what life will be like without them. You will then be prepared for your not-so-distant future. This is not to say that to plan to provide for the basic necessities is addiction rather than wisdom. Here again ask for discernment. We remind you that it is our concern for all that motivates us to share as much guidance as possible, for this project is of critical importance. The Creator is non-preferential in the desire to retain every fragment. We however value our ground team greatly. Friendship is a wondrous part of the shared experience of self-aware manifested fragments. You don't remember us, but we remember you. Number 33. The days are now upon us for gathering the focus that will bring about the transformation of the mass consciousness. It will be an interesting process of interlinking various consciously begun projects at different places on the planet. There are more than one ground crew with purposeful assignments. While it is natural to feel that what one person or one group is attempting is too little too late, this is not the case. All are now in place, or nearly enough so that the concerted beginning can be initiated. It is necessary that the resolve, intent, and purpose be held securely within the scope of each of you, as the days ahead may seem discouraging. You must hold to your commitment with a calm and trust that does not waver. This experience is a manifested reality that must be dealt with inside that reality. The game must be continued on until completion. It can no longer be changed or delayed. Humanity is sinking into greater fear and confusion, furthering the plans of the manipulators at a rapid pace. The spiritual levels of each are becoming more and more inaccessible, and the reaction of the spirit expressing through the body to this process will continue to reflect through the reaction of the planet also. It is not a pretty picture from our perspective. It is not our intent to focus your attention into this picture, but it is also necessary that you are aware of what you are working within. It is unfortunate that it has had to proceed this far into the levels of suffering before the consciousness becomes vulnerable and desperate enough to pause and reflect that enough is enough. Perhaps now enough can be reached with the desire to bring this situation to an end, to be willing to accomplish it through a total change of ingrained habitual reactions. The locking mechanism has been what has been called the opium of religion. The religious doctrine of ours is the only way, and all else is wrong, has literally created cells within a dungeon of ignorance, with every modern religious sect present and accounted for. This is not to say that some truth is not present within them, but there is not enough either within any one, or even a composite of the truth known within all of them, now to guide mankind in anything but unending circles of frustration. The innate desire is always within each to progress toward the goal of transcending this entrapment within the third dimension, and now religion offers no way to continue the journey. The aspiration of each soul extension as it incarnates on earth is to assist in bringing this situation back into balance. Each desires to become part of the pivotal pebble in the pond, but instead is caught in the entrapment of the heavy oppressive pattern of energies and become part of the chorus calling out for assistance. The assistance cannot come from without, it must come from within through self-empowerment, not for the purpose of placing the self over and above others, but in the genuine desire to inspire others to follow suit. In this way, these individuals come into harmony with the creative flow and with the focused conscious desire of those who are dedicated to this purpose that have accomplished this transcendence before. Unfortunately, the situation has reached such a sad state that dedicated ones of higher dimensions have now volunteered to incarnate and act on behalf of the inhabitants and set into motion a wave of self-empowerment on the planet. These volunteers are numerous and await the triggers planted within their awareness to remember their roles. The time has come for this to begin. Now is the time for these self-appointed ones to lead mankind from being into becoming what was intended. Human being is a misnomer, each is a human becoming. Knowing this and referring to themselves in this way, each would be constantly focused upon the true purpose of incarnation. Then the internal cry of those on the planet and the planet herself in this moment of time would become, I am a human, God-man, becoming. Help me to do this. Then response is possible. It changes the focus from, I am a victim, help me, which implies help me to continue being a victim, to a focus of desire for self-empowerment. After centuries of calling for someone or some ritual or miracle to accomplish the impossible, man has been unable to figure out that it must come from within his own awareness and the empowering of himself so that it can be accomplished. Instead, the self-empowerment urge was distorted into self-aggrandizement, and the result is seen all around you. The shift of your own consciousness toward your desire for this end has brought forth your ability to attract these messages. As the wake-up triggers are tripped, the ripples of the pebble shall become waves. Then the action shall begin and many levels of links shall form and wheels shall begin to turn. A beleaguered mass consciousness shall experience a shift, as will the planet. This will not be the shift, but will be the beginning of the necessary upliftment that must precede that process. Keep in mind the vibratory level of the mass consciousness. No inhabitant of planet Earth could survive a shift to fourth dimension at this time. No amount of meditating and listening to channeled entities has accomplished this feat. It must be a shift in self-perception and focus of the purpose of this incarnation in great numbers to accomplish this, as the flow now is downward in vibratory rate into disease and death. To halt this movement and change its direction will require a shift of major proportion. The normal vibratory rate of a human body has been determined to be between 62 and 68 MHz. The brain functions optimally between 72 and 90 MHz. When the body vibration lowers to 58 MHz, it can catch a cold, at 57 MHz the flu, 55 MHz candida, 52 MHz Epstein-Barr, 42 MHz cancer, and at 25 MHz death begins. By considering the health problems of your friends and family, you can begin to get a true picture. Our interesting negative planners simply lower the megahertz of someone they would like to eliminate through their recently devised methods. Within a short period of time, the body either develops a fatal disease, or if lowered enough, death occurs, and whatever disease already present is the excuse. Allopathic medicine, a misnomer, chemical prescriptions, lower the megahertz of the body. Radiation from TV and computer screens lowers the megahertz, and consuming processed and canned foods, which have 0 megahertz to support the body, continue the process. Starvation is the least subtle of the ways to lower the megahertz and bring on the lowering of the mass consciousness before each dies. In that way these make their contribution to this descending cycle. The human body has amazing adaptive abilities, but the onslaught of ways to bring down the vibratory level to tie you to this planet has reached a critical point. The good news is that the shift in focus of purpose by the critical mass within the encompassing planetary consciousness can go beyond removing a few critical dominoes as placed by the interesting planners. It could reverse the way they fall, thereby releasing the lowering process and allowing the megahertz of the bodies to increase. Now that is an interesting supposition to consider. The picture as it is at the moment is beyond discouraging, it is appalling. However, in playing out various scenarios in holographic possibilities, it is not at all hopeless. The keys lie in the cards held by the ground crew. How these are played will determine which of the scenarios are available to ensure success. Keep playing. The last game has just begun and the creator never gambles. He only plays the sure bets. After all, he made up the game and he never forgets the rules. You can rely on that. His turn to shuffle and deal is about to come up. Don't wait for it to happen elsewhere. Be here now. End number 33.